Hi everyone. Today we're going to be talking about composting indigo, which is the step that happens directly after you drop your leaves off to us at Praxis. And I'm just going to narrate over some images and video that we took last year, as that's the last time that we've composted. And we will do this step again with your leaves this winter as well. So this is an image taken in 2019 of the artist Roland Ricketts in the blue t-shirt as he came to Cleveland to help us build our composting floor. This floor is built in the traditional Japanese process, and it's essentially a gigantic drain. It is a 12-foot by 12-foot by 4-foot deep hole that is dug in our garage. You'll all get to see it when you come visit and try the indigo dye. And it's been backfilled with a number of things. So the first thing is 2 different sizes of gravel. Then it's covered with a layer of sand. And the last is a thick layer of clay. So what you're seeing now is the clay at the top layer. It's powdered clay. And it gets poured on top of the floor and is watered and tamped and watered and tamped until it's a hard, thick layer of clay. And that's what the composted leaves get put directly on top of. So here it is. This is a 400-pound pile of dried indigo leaves, a collection of 3 years of growing indigo here at Praxis and with community volunteers in 2020. You need a lot of leaves in order to do this process because the internal temperature of the compost pile has to get hot enough for the indigo to break down enough and form the highest amount of concentrate of the natural plant. So this video demonstrates us creating this pile by putting all of the bags of dried leaves and then evenly spraying them with water and then stirring to make sure that the water is evenly spread. There's some black fabric underneath just to help the indigo not go through the cracks of the floor, which we never successfully got rid of all the cracks in the clay floor. But it was so fun. We just watered and watered until it was the right consistency. And this was after the very first week. So we covered the pile and we came back in about a week, and a white film had grown over the leaves, which is a sign that the bacteria were activated and that the composting had begun. So that was an exciting marker for us. And from here on out, we met once a week and we turned the pile, which meant we had to take hose and break the pile up so that there were no clumps of indigo, and turn it so it was on the top, is now on the bottom, and then add water if necessary. Some weeks we did, some weeks we didn't, but it was the moisture in the composting pile that actually activated that temperature. So you can see here at the very top of the video that there's a thermometer, and every week we would unwrap the pile and test its temperature. So we were doing this in the dead of winter, so it was very cold, as you can imagine, and at the end of every week when we turned the pile, we wrapped it in this styrofoam fabric blanket. We did get smart after a few weeks and actually kept the thermometer inside the center of the pile so we could check the temperature on actually a daily basis because we wanted to make sure that there were no sudden dips. At that point, we would know that maybe the pile was too wet or something was happening that could potentially ruin our amount of indigo, which would have been a disaster. So we kept a really, really close eye on it, took lots of good notes. So this is an example of how we were turning the pile. So you can see we had just like your standard garden hoe, and actually there were huge hard clumps that needed to be broken up. So this process kind of could take a while depending on the day. So here's just some cycling through. The whole entire process took about 12 weeks. We turned the pile on Thursdays, generally speaking. We were waiting for that temperature to increase. Active composting temperatures anywhere between 100 and 140 degrees, but the indigo is supposed to get a little bit even hotter. So we're going to watch the temperature really closely. You can see that the thermometer is in that green zone right now, meaning that it was actively composting at that time. This was probably about halfway in, week 6. And this is kind of continuing. The color started to change. It went from that green down to a dark, dark, beautiful brown, deep, rich hue. It's getting hotter and hotter now. I think that the highest that it ever got was about 150 or 100, almost 155, I think, degrees. And at that point, the temperature started to drop, and we noticed that over probably the climax in temperature was at week 9 or 10, and then over the next 2 weeks, we watched the temperature slowly drop and drop. Here we're on the other side of the bell curve. The thermometer is going back down, and we kept turning on a weekly basis until the pile was at ambient temperature, and then we knew that the composting had been completed. And at that point, the indigo is now called Sukumo, Sukumo, which is a Japanese term for this special type of composted and processed indigo, and it's ready to be vatted. This is a close-up of what that compost looks like in my hands, ready to begin the vat. So it took 12 weeks. We started with almost 400 pounds of dried leaves, and in the end, we had 250 pounds of Sukumo in which to create our indigo vats. So on our calculations and with the help and guidance of Roland Ricketts, we knew that was about equivalent to 8 55-gallon drums of indigo. Here are an image of all of those bags stored and ready for use. So we had a really wonderful experience. We're in our third vat of indigo that we've made so far, and we're going to compost again this winter with all the leaves that you've been growing at home. So we can't wait, and thank you so much for listening.